"Who did this to you?" 3 words. Quiet. Steady, but they hit that diner like a thunderclap. Lily Cross's hand froze mid-reach for the coffee pot. Her eyes, those tired, careful eyes, blue and deep, snapped to the man sitting across the counter. A biker, black leather jacket, a scar along his jaw most people would miss. Eyes so sharp they felt like an X-ray. She hadn't heard those words in years, not from anyone who meant them. And suddenly, without warning, she started to cry. The man didn't move, didn't look away, didn't do what everyone else in this town had done for 14 months. He stayed. And what happened over the next 72 hours? In this diner, in this town, would change everything. For Lily, for the man who asked, and for every single person in Millhaven who had seen the bruises and chosen to look away. This is that story. Let's go back to the beginning. If this story already has your heart, stay with it, because none of what happened in Millhaven made sense unless you understood what that town had already decided to forget. The morning Cole Rains rode into Millhaven, a Tuesday in late October. The temperature was dropping and the maple trees lining Route 9 had gone the color of old rust. He didn't know the name of the town when he pulled off the highway. He only knew his stomach was empty and his crew needed to stop. Behind him came 11 motorcycles, steady, heavy, rolling like slow thunder. The engines alone were enough to make people step back from sidewalks. Enough to make a gas station attendant forget what he was supposed to be doing. People in small towns like Millhaven had seen bikers pass through before, sure. But not like this, not a full formation. Not leather cuts with that particular patch, Iron Wolves MC. Cole Rains was 38 years old and looked it in the best possible way. A man who had been through enough that his face told the truth without him having to say a word. Tall, lean, a black leather jacket worn soft from 1,000 miles, blonde hair going silver at the temples. And those eyes, pale blue, almost gray, the kind that seemed to be measuring distance even when he was sitting still. A small scar ran along the left side of his jaw. Most people would miss it. The ones who noticed knew better than to ask. He wasn't a man who scared people intentionally. But he was a man who had learned a long time ago that the world rarely gave you a warning before it asked everything from you. So, he paid attention. Always. He spotted the diner from the road, a long building with a hand-painted sign that read the Blue Spoon. He pulled in. The others followed. The bell above the door jingled when Cole pushed it open. And every single person inside went quiet. A couple in a window booth looked up from their eggs and looked back down. A man at the counter hunched slightly over his coffee. 2 teenagers near the back stopped mid-law and pretended to study the laminated menus like they were studying for finals. Cole didn't acknowledge any of it. He pulled out a stool at the counter, sat down, and picked up the little handwritten card that listed the breakfast specials. His road captain, a stocky man named Jude Cross, beard down to his collarbone, the kind of man who smiled easily and meant it, dropped onto the stool beside him. "You think they do real biscuits here, or the frozen kind?" "Frozen," Cole said without looking up. "Always frozen in these small towns. Order them anyway." That was when Lily Cross came out from the kitchen. She was carrying a coffee pot in one hand and a stack of paper order tickets in the other. moving fast the way people move when they're used to being told they aren't moving fast enough. 27 years old, slight, pale skin, the kind that showed everything: tiredness, cold, worry. Her hair pulled back, pretty in the way that hard work and careful hiding tend to leave a woman, being slowly worn down from the inside out, like something beautiful being slowly worn down from the inside out. Beneath her half-open uniform jacket, a pink shirt hugged close to her frame, the kind of pink that had no business standing out, but somehow did. Like a small, defiant thing that refused to disappear. Her eyes were blue, deep, the color of water that had no bottom. Cole didn't stare at her. He wasn't that kind of man. But he noticed her the same way he noticed everything, quickly, carefully, cataloging details without making a production of it. She poured coffee for the couple by the window first, smiled at them, asked if they needed anything else. Her voice was gentle, a little soft, the kind of voice that had learned not to take up too much space. Then she came down the counter. "Good morning," she said. Her eyes went briefly to Cole, then to Jude, then to the rest of the crew settling into booths. "Welcome to the Blue Spoon. Can I start everyone off with coffee?" "Please," Cole said. She poured. Her hand was steady, but her eyes weren't. She was reading the room the same way prey reads a new predator, not panicked, but alert. Calculating exits. Cole noticed that too. What he didn't notice right away. Not at first, not until she reached across to set down a small creamer and her sleeve shifted slightly up her forearm. Were the bruises. Not one. Not a fresh accident, a constellation of them. Old yellow at the edges, newer purple closer to the wrist. The kind that come in a pattern. The kind that don't happen by walking into a door frame. Cole's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. He looked back down at his menu. Jude hadn't noticed. He was already trying to wave down Lily to ask about the biscuits. Cole said nothing, not yet, but something had shifted in him. Something quiet and cold and very, very old. Derrick Holt came out of the back office 20 minutes later. Cole had almost finished his breakfast. The eggs were decent. The biscuits were, as predicted, frozen. Then he heard the voice. Sharp. Low. The kind of voice that was used to giving orders and had never once considered whether the order was fair. "Lily, table 4 has been waiting 11 minutes. That's embarrassing." Lily was across the diner clearing dishes. "I'm sorry, I had a rush on the—" "I don't want to hear about a rush. I want that table taken care of. Now." She moved immediately. No hesitation. No argument. She moved the way someone moves when they've learned that argument only makes it worse. Derrick Holt was somewhere in his early 50s. Heavy set, the kind of heavy that came from years of sitting behind a desk and believing the world owed him comfort. His head was shaved close, scalp catching the diner light. A collared shirt stretched tight across his stomach, a gold clip holding a tie he didn't need to wear. Rings on 2 fingers, thick gold, the kind worn by men who needed people to notice their hands. His power in that diner didn't come from his size. It came from the fact that everyone in the room, including Lily, had already decided not to challenge him. He swept his eyes across the counter and landed on Cole. Cole met his gaze. Neither man looked away for a long moment. Then Derrick made a sound in the back of his throat, not quite dismissal, not quite acknowledgement, and went back toward his office. Jude leaned over and murmured, "Charming fellow." Yeah, Cole said quietly. He was still thinking about the Bruises. It was around the time Lily brought out their second round of coffee that it happened. She was moving between the counter and the nearest booth, balancing 3 plates on one arm the way experienced waitresses do. When Derrick reappeared from the back, he didn't shout. He didn't make a scene. He was too practiced for that. He simply stepped into her path, close enough that she had to pull up short to avoid walking into him. And he said very quietly, quiet enough that only people sitting close could hear, "You shortchanged 7 by 40 cents this morning, team. Ah. You want to tell me how that happens?" Lily's shoulders went stiff. "I must have miscounted." You'll what?" "Be more careful. You said that last week." "I know. I'm sorry, Derrick." "Sorry doesn't come out of my register, does it?" No. He let the word sit there a moment. Then, almost casually, he put a hand on her shoulder. Not a gesture of comfort, a squeeze. Fingers digging in just slightly before he released her. "Get back to work." He walked away. Lily stood still for exactly 1.5 seconds. Then she adjusted the plates in her arms, smoothed her expression back into something neutral, and kept moving. Nobody at the counter said a word. Cole put down his coffee cup, very slowly. Jude was watching him now. He'd seen that look before. Not anger, not exactly. Something quieter. Something that meant Cole had already made a decision and was simply waiting for the right moment. "Cole." "I know," Cole said. "We're just passing through." Cole didn't answer. He didn't confront Derrick Holt that morning. He wasn't impulsive. He never had been. That was a myth about men like him, that they operated on rage alone. Real strength, Cole had learned over 38 hard years, wasn't about the first punch. Knowing which battles punch. It was about knowing which battles mattered and having the patience to fight them right. Instead, he left a tip that was 3 times the cost of breakfast, tucked under his coffee cup where Lily would find it. And when she caught up to him at the door, confused, her eyes going wide when she saw the bills, he just shook his head slightly. "You earned it," he said. Simple, direct, not a lie, just the truth. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Her eyes did something then. A flicker, brief and startled, like a light coming on in a window that had been dark for a long time. Then he walked out. The crew rolled out of Millhaven at 9:47 in the morning. They made it 23 miles down Route 9. Before Cole pulled over, Jude pulled up beside him. Something wrong with the bike. Cole sat with his hands on the handlebars, looking at the road ahead. The maples on either side had gone deep rust and amber, the kind of color that only comes right before everything falls. Then he said, "Those bruises weren't from a fall." Jude was quiet. "She's been living like that for a while," Cole continued. "You could see it in how she moved. She wasn't afraid of us. She barely reacted to us walking in. She's already at maximum, already running on empty." He paused. "You know what that means." Jude knew. They both knew. They'd both seen it. "Cole, we have a run to make. Chicago, Tuesday." "I know." The wind moved through the maples overhead. A long silence that had weight to it. "She looked at me," Cole said. "I laughed now. When I left the tip, she looked at me like she'd forgotten that was something people did." He paused. "That's not about 40 cents from a register, Jude. That man has been grinding her down for a long time." Another silence. "So, what do you want to do?" Jude asked. Cole sat with that question for a moment. sat with the road ahead and the rust-colored trees and the particular cold cod that comes in October, when the year starts letting go of things. Then he said something he had never told anyone on the road before. "I had a sister," he said, "Mara. She worked in a diner in Phoenix for 2 years before she married a man named Travis, who turned out to be the worst kind of man I'd ever known." He stopped. I saw the signs. I told myself it wasn't my place, that she was an adult, that she hadn't asked me to interfere. The wind moved again. I didn't act. And then one night, Travis put Mara in the hospital with 3 cracked ribs and a broken cheekbone. Jude said nothing. The right kind of nothing. I spent the rest of my life carrying that inaction like a stone in my chest, Cole said. I am not going to do that again. Not this time. He turned the bike around. Jude watched him for one long moment. Then, without a word, without needing one, he turned his bike around too. One by one, the others followed. 12 motorcycles heading back toward Millhaven, not racing, not urgent, just steady and certain, the way a decision feels when it's already been made and all that's left is to move. They didn't go back that morning. Cole wasn't reckless. He needed to think it through, needed to understand what he was walking into before he walked into it. So instead, the crew found a motor lodge 7 miles outside of town. Clean enough. A parking lot big enough for the bikes. And Cole spent the afternoon making quiet inquiries. He had contacts. 30 years on the road teaches you that. He made a call to a man named Vic, who knew people in the county, and by mid-afternoon he knew the shape of Derrick Holt's life. Derrick Holt had owned the Blue Spoon Diner for 11 years. He'd bought it from the original owner, a woman named Patricia Wynn, now retired in Florida with a rotace tanger than 8 or 9 months, and had never seemed to stay longer than 8 or 9 months. Turnover was described as high. The county labor board had received 2 clean complaints in 5 years, both anonymous, both closed without action. Deep lot action. Lily Cross had worked there for 14 months. Cole did the math on that, and it sat heavy in his chest. He thought about calling the police. He considered it seriously. He wasn't the kind of man who dismissed the law out of hand, but he also knew how these situations worked in small towns. A woman with bruises that could be explained away. A manager with no priors. A community that had clearly decided to look in the other direction. Police reports required complainants. Lily hadn't complained. And she wouldn't. Not yet. Not while she was still in it. That evening, Cole sat outside the motor lodge with a cup of bad coffee and thought about the way she moved. The way she held the coffee pot slightly higher than necessary to keep her sleeve from sliding down. The way she smoothed her expression back into something neutral in less than 2 seconds. The practiced automatic erasure of a person who had learned that showing anything only made it worse. 14 months of that, he was not going to look away. The next morning, the crew rolled back into Millhaven and parked in front of the Blue Spoon Diner at 8:15. Cole had a plan, not a plan for confrontation. A plan to talk to Lily Cross. First, though, he needed to see how she was without Derrick watching, so he timed it. Watched through the window. He could see Derrick in his office through the small glass partition at the back. He could see Lily on the floor, moving between tables, pink shirt beneath her half-open uniform jacket, eyes down, steps careful. He waited until Derrick's head was down, looking at something on his desk. Then he walked in. Lily saw him immediately. Her eyes went wide, then guarded. Then carefully, professionally neutral. "Back again," she said when he sat down at the counter. "Best biscuits in 3 counties, Cole said. She almost smiled. "They're frozen." "I know. I'm back anyway." She poured his coffee without being asked. Her hand was steadier this time. Or maybe she was just better at hiding it. Cole leaned forward slightly and spoke low and even. "I want to ask you something. And I need you to know that you can tell me it's none of my business, and I'll respect that completely." "Can I do that?" Lily stilled. The coffee pot hovered above his cup. "Okay," she said carefully. Cole looked at her directly. Not threatening, not pitying, just steady. The kind of steadiness that is its own language. "Who did this to you?" The question landed like something falling from a great height. Lily Cross stood completely still. For a moment she was a photograph of herself. Not breathing, not blinking. The coffee pot trembled slightly in her hand. Cole reached out calmly and took it from her, set it on the counter between them, and then her face did something he hadn't expected. It didn't go hard. It didn't go angry. It crumbled quietly the way very old walls crumble, not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily from the inside out. Her eyes filled. One tear slipped down her left cheek, and she didn't raise her hand to stop it. Maybe because she was too surprised. Maybe because she'd been holding it back so long that when something finally shifted, her body simply didn't ask her permission. "I don't," she started. "You don't have to answer," Cole said. Still quiet. "I just needed you to know that I saw it, that somebody saw it." Another tear. Her jaw tightened. "He's going to come out of that office in about 6 minutes, she whispered. "Then we'll be done by then," Cole said simply. She looked at him, really looked. The way people look when they're trying to figure out if something is safe. Not in the abstract, but actually urgently safe. Calculating risk. "I've been here 14 months, she said finally. Her voice was barely above a breath. "I know." That surprised her. "How?" I asked around, quietly. "I'm not from here, Lily. I don't have a dog in the politics of this town. I just—" He paused, searched for the right words, settled on the simplest ones. "I saw what I saw, and I don't walk away from things I see anymore." She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "Fast, reflexive. It's complicated," she said. "It always is." "He doesn't." She stopped, looked down, seemed to be wrestling with something, turning it over and over. "He doesn't hurt me. Not like what you're probably thinking." Cole waited. "It's other things," she said. "The way he talks, the way he looks at me, taking money from my tips for errors, telling me I'm lucky to have a job, grabbing my arm when he wants me to move faster and he doesn't want to shout." She paused. "Last week he pushed me into the storage shelf and said I was clumsy." Her voice dropped even lower. "In front of the dishwasher, in front of Tommy, who's 17 years old, and Tommy just looked away." A beat. Because he's seen it enough times now that he looks away. Cole felt the old familiar weight, Carl, settle back into his chest. The same weight he'd carried since Phoenix. Since Mara. Since the night he'd chosen not to act and spent the years after learning what that choice really cost. "Where do you live?" he asked. She blinked. "That's why I'm asking. Because I want to know if you can leave, if you have somewhere to go." "I have an apartment, 3 blocks away." A thin, slightly broken sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "I walked here this morning because my car broke down last month, and I can't afford to get it fixed because—" She stopped, pressed her lips together. "Because Derrick docked my pay 3 times in the last 6 weeks, for things that were not my fault." Cole was very still. "You've got family anywhere?" "My sister. She's in Knoxville. We talk on the phone." A pause. "I haven't told her. I don't want to worry her." From the back, through the little glass partition, Cole could see Derrick Holt pushing back from his desk. "He's coming," Cole said calmly. Pete said calm. Lily straightened immediately, picked up the coffee pot, smoothed her expression like drawing a shade over a window, and right then, in that single motion, that practiced automatic erasure of herself, Cole Raines made a decision that was absolute and final and very clear. This would end. He didn't know how yet, but it would end. Derrick Holt emerged from the office, scanning the floor. His eyes landed on Cole first. Something moved across his face, not quite recognition, but a kind of territorial irritability. Then his eyes went to Lily. "Lily, flat, even. You've got people waiting." "Yes, I was just—" "You were just what?" Cole looked up at Derrick Holt then, looked at him the same way he'd looked at him yesterday morning. Steady, unhurried. "She was just taking my order," Cole said pleasantly. "I take a while to decide. My fault entirely." Derrick held his gaze for one long moment, then he looked away first. He always looked away first. That was the thing about men like Derrick Holt. Their power depended on the other person flinching, and Cole Raines had not flinched at things considerably more dangerous than a dynamite manager in a collared shirt. "Fine," Derrick said, and went back to the floor. Cole looked at Lily. She was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite understand, something between disbelief and the very early, very tentative beginning of something that might have been hope. "I'll have the eggs," he said, "and the frozen biscuits." She let out a breath. "Okay, Lily." She looked at him. "I'm going to come back tomorrow," he said, "with some people I'd like you to meet." She didn't ask who. She just nodded slowly, like some part of her, some buried and almost forgotten part, already understood that something had changed in the atmosphere of her life, that a pressure she'd grown so used to she'd stopped noticing was about to shift. Cole Raines ate his eggs, drank his coffee, left another tip under his cup, and that night, back at the motor lodge, he sat down with his crew, 11 men and 2 women, all of them road-worn and clear-eyed. And he told them everything he knew about a woman named Lily Cross and a man named Derrick Holt. When he was done, the room was quiet. Then Jude said, "What do you need from us?" Cole looked at each of them in turn. These people who had chosen the same road he had, who understood without having to say it that there were things you could not unknow, and choices you could not unmake. "I need you to show up," he said. "That's all. Just show up." And every single one of them nodded. The next morning came cool and gray, a thin mist sitting low over Millhaven's main street. At 8:05, the sound of 12 motorcycles rolled into town. They parked in a row in front of the Blue Spoon Diner. In the kitchen, Lily Cross heard the engines and stood very still, a dish towel in her hands. Tommy, the 17-year-old dishwasher, pressed up to the small window that looked out to the parking lot. His eyes went wide. "Lily," he said in a voice full of something young and stunned and almost reverent, There's like a lot of them. Lily set down the dish towel. She pushed through the kitchen door. She walked out onto the floor, and there at the counter, occupying the same stool as if he'd simply never left, was Cole Raines. Pale blue eyes, quiet certainty, looking at her like he had all the time in the world, like he wasn't going anywhere. Like for the first time in 14 months, she didn't have to carry this alone. Lily stood in the middle of the diner floor and felt something she had not felt in a very long time. The specific, almost unbearable sensation of being seen, not watched, not monitored, not surveilled the way Derrick watched her, like a hawk watching something smaller than itself. Seen. The way Cole Raines was looking at her now. Steady and unhurried. Like her presence in the room was something that mattered. She walked to the counter and picked up the coffee pot, because it was the only thing she knew how to do, and her hands were already reaching for routine before 12 fully caught up Aufchibal settling into fell motorcycle parked outside in the Blue Spoon diner, and 12 people settling into every available seat in the Blue Spoon. "Morning," Cole said. "Morning," she said back. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "Same as yesterday?" "Same as yesterday." The morning moved orders came and went. The diner filled with the low, comfortable noise of people who were not remotely in a hurry. Then Derrick Holt walked out of his office. She heard him, walked out of he saw him. His particular walk, the deliberate placement of each footstep. The sound of a man who believed his presence should be announced. She turned. Derrick was standing in the middle of the diner floor, looking at it. 12 bikers. Every booth filled. The counter packed from one end to the other. His jaw was tight. His eyes moved across the room with the slow, measuring quality of a man doing calculations he didn't like the outcome of. Then they landed on Lily. "My office," he said. "Quiet, even." The word landed in her stomach like a stone. She set down the coffee pot. She smoothed her apron. She started across the floor. And then Cole's voice came from behind her, completely conversational. Not raised, not aggressive. Everything okay. It was directed at her, not at Derrick. At her. Lily stopped walking. That was the thing. She actually stopped. Her feet ceased moving of their own accord, like something in her nervous system had registered as a genuine option rather than a rhetorical one. Like someone had just reminded her that stopped was a direction she was allowed to travel. She turned to look at Cole. He was watching her with that same unhurried steadiness. His coffee cup in his hand. He wasn't standing up. He wasn't posturing. He was simply present, simply there, simply asking. Yes, she said. "I'll be right back." She felt Derrick's eyes on her back the whole way to the office. He closed the door behind them. Not a slam. Deliberate, controlled. "Who are those people?" he said. "Customers," Lily said. "Don't be smart." "I'm not being smart, Derrick. They came in yesterday and they came back today." "You know them?" "The man at the counter spoke to me yesterday. He left a tip." That's the extent of it. Derrick studied her face with the particular scrutiny of a man who had spent years looking for evidence of something to punish. Something moved behind his eyes, cold and calculating. "I want them gone by 10, he said. "Give them their food. Give them their check. Move them along. We're not a truck stop." Lily held his gaze and said nothing. She went back out to the floor, picked up the coffee pot. Her hands were trembling. and she pressed them briefly against her apron before she trusted herself to pour. Cole was watching her. She met his eyes for just a second, gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. He nodded once. Message received. And he didn't move. At 10:15, Derrick reappeared from his office. He looked at the bikers, still occupying every booth, still nursing coffees, still engaged in the comfortable, low-level noise of people who were not remotely in a hurry. His face did something complicated. He looked at Lily. She was refilling Cole's coffee cup, and she met Derrick's eyes over the rim of the pot with an expression that was perfectly neutral. Perfectly professional. Perfectly everything he had trained her to be. He went back to his office without saying a word. Jude, without turning around, said quietly, "Smooth." "Don't," Lily said. But she almost smiled. Almost. That afternoon, Cole sat outside the motor lodge with his phone. He made a call to a man named Gerald Hatch. Someone he'd done a favor for 4 years ago, involving a stranded motorist and a flat tire. Gerald sat on the county labor board. Cole explained, quietly, carefully, in the particular plain language of a man who knew how to make a request sound like a conversation. What he had seen at the Blue Spoon Diner. What 14 months looked like on a person. What a pattern of small things added up to when you wrote them all in the same document. Gerald listened. Then he said, "I'll make some calls." Cole set the phone down and looked at the ceiling of the small motor lodge room. Then his phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text. He read it once. "Be careful who you make enemies of in this town. Some of them have longer reach than you think." Cole read it again, set the phone down, then picked it up and forwarded the text to Gerald Hatch with a single line beneath it. "Thought you should see this." Gerald's response came back in 4 minutes. "I'll make some more calls." Cole set the phone on the table, looked at the ceiling, thought about Derrick Holt's face when he'd looked away first. Thought about Lily's hand going still when the coffee pot trembled. Thought about a 17-year-old kid in a flour-dusted apron who had learned to look away. Something had shifted in the atmosphere of Millhaven since yesterday morning, and Derrick Holt could feel it, even if he didn't fully understand it yet. Cole closed his eyes. He had learned over 38 years how to sleep before a fight. He slept. Cole's phone rang at 6:47 in the morning. He was already awake. He'd been awake since 5, sitting with a cup of bad motor lodge coffee in the particular quiet of a man who knows something is standing up and has decided to meet it standing up. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. Same unknown number as last night's text, he answered. Silence on the other end. Not dead air, breathing silence. Someone who had dialed and then lost their nerve. "Lily," he said, a sharp intake of breath. Then, "How did you know it was me?" "Because the only other person who'd be calling from that number at this hour is Derrick Holt. And Derrick Holt doesn't strike me as someone who loses his nerve mid-dial." He paused. What happened? Silence. Longer this time. He waited. He had learned over 38 years that some silences needed to be waited through rather than filled. "He came to my apartment last night," she said finally. Cole went very still. "He didn't touch me," she said quickly, reading the quality of his silence correctly. "He knocked on the door and I didn't open it. He stood in the hallway and talked through the door for 12 minutes. I know it was 12 minutes because I was watching the clock on my microwave." She paused. He told me I needed to think carefully about where my loyalties were. That I'd been an excellent employee, and he'd hate to have to reconsider that assessment. That the men who came into the diner were the people who caused trouble and moved on, and left other people to deal the afterm. Cole pressed his thumb against the bridge of his nose. He also told me, Lily continued, her voice dropping slightly, that he'd already had a conversation with my landlord, Ray Fitch. They're friends. They've been friends for 20 years. A pause that was drier than any of the previous ones. Apparently Ray is reconsidering whether my lease arrangement is still working for him. Your lease, Cole said flatly. Month to month, she said, has been since I moved in. Cole was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Where are you right now? My apartment. Are you safe right now, at this moment? Yes, he left last night. He hasn't come back. Don't go to work today. Cole, I have a shift at 7. I know. Don't go. If I don't go, he'll dock my pay, or worse, he'll Lily. His voice was calm and absolutely certain. I know what you're about to say, and I understand why you're saying it. But I need you to trust me for about 4 hours. Can you do that? A long pause. He could hear her breathing, could hear under the breathing the specific texture of a person doing the math on trust. Calculating risk, calculating history, calculating the difference between a person who says trust me and means it, and a person who says trust me and means something else entirely. 4 hours, she said. 4 hours, he confirmed. Call in sick. I'll handle the rest. She hung up. Cole put the phone down and looked at Jude, who had been sitting on the other bed pretending to read a gas station paperback for the last 4 minutes. How much of that did you get? Cole asked. Enough, Jude said. He set the paperback down. He went to her apartment, Cole. I know. That's not a manager being territorial anymore. That's something else. I know that too. Jude was quiet for a moment. Then, what do we do? Cole was already reaching for his boots. Get everyone up. We're going to the diner. They arrived at the Blue Spoon at 7:18. Lily was not there. Greta, the other waitress, 19 years old and doing an admirable job of prostituting, she wasn't terrified, told Cole in a whispered rush that Derrick had arrived at 7 sharp, had asked where Lily was, had been told she'd called in sick, had responded by going door his office and slamming had enough that the little framed print of a covered bridge rattled on the wall. Cole sat down at the counter. He ordered coffee. He waited. At 7:42, Tommy appeared from the kitchen, peeling off his rubber gloves. He looked at Cole with the expression of someone who had spent the last 20 minutes working up his nerve. I heard her call in, Tommy said. I was in the back. I heard Derrick on the phone after. He hesitated. He said, it needs to happen today, before this gets bigger. He swallowed. I don't know what that means. But it didn't sound right. Cole looked at him. You did the right thing, Tommy. Go back to work. Act normal. Tommy went back to the kitchen. Jude leaned in from the adjacent stool. It needs to happen today before this gets bigger. He kept his voice low. Cole, that man is going to move against her. He's already moving, Cole said. The landlord was the opening. He's testing which levers work. So what do? We take away the levers. He pulled out his phone. He made 2 calls. The first to Gerald Hatch, who confirmed that a formal inquiry into employment practices at the Blue Spoon Diner had been opened at 8 that morning. Derrick Holt would be receiving a formal written notice within 24 hours. The second call was to a woman named Diane Colby, who ran the County Domestic Violence Advocacy Organization out of a small office on the east side of town. For koffer food is finest town. Diane answered on the first ring and said she'd been waiting to hear from him since Sandra had called her the previous afternoon. Cole hadn't known Sandra had called Diane. He thought about that for a moment, about Sandra, mid-50s, silver hair, quietly making her own calls on her own timeline without telling anyone. And he felt something that was close to gratitude and also close to the specific relief of not being the only person in the room who understood what needed to happen. He hung up. He put his phone on the counter. He drank his coffee. At 8:15, Derrick's office door opened. He walked out with his jacket on and his keys in his hand. Cole kept his expression neutral. He watched Derrick move toward the front door, watched him pause when he registered the bikers still occupying half the diner, watched something move across his face, irritation, recalculation, before he pulled the door open and walked out. Cole looked at Jude. "Don't follow him." Jude looked at him. "He's going to her apartment?" Cole said. "'Cause she didn't come in. Because he sent a message last night and he needs to know if it landed." He paused. He's going to try to finish what he started. He left a 20 on the counter and walked out. The walk to Lily's apartment building took 6 minutes. Cole knew the address because Lily had mentioned it. 3 blocks from the diner. The building with the green awning. The one she walked to every night after her shift in the dark. He heard Derrick's voice before he turned the corner. Not shouting. Derrick never shouted in public. Cole had already understood that about him. But elevated, taut, the voice of a man who was accustomed to his presence alone being sufficient pressure. "Lily, I know you're in there. Open the door." Cole came around the corner and into the building's small lobby. Derrick Holt stood in front of a door on the ground floor, one hand pressed flat against the wood, his whole posture radiating the specific coiled energy of a man who had decided that patience was no longer the right tool. He heard Cole's footsteps and turned. The two men looked at each other. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered across Derrick's face that was not quite fear, but was adjacent to it. The startled recalibration of a man who believed he was alone and suddenly wasn't. Then it closed over, smoothed out, replaced by the controlled disdain that was his natural armor. "This is a private building," Derrick said. "Door was open," Cole said, which was true. The lobby door had a broken latch, the kind of thing that happened in buildings owned by landlords, who were more into protecting their personal relationships and vengeance than their tenants. "You have no business here. I'm visiting a friend." Derrick stared at him. "You need to leave this situation alone. You do not understand what you are involving yourself in." "Then explain it to me. This is between me and my employee. She called in sick," Cole said. "She's not your employee right now. She's a private citizen in her own home, and you're standing in her hallway at 8 in the morning after showing up here last night." He tilted his head slightly. "You want to explain how that looks from the outside?" Derrick's jaw went tight. "I came to check on her at 8 in the morning after sending her a message last night about her loyalties. Cole said it evenly. No heat, just the facts arranged in a row. Derrick, he took one step forward. Not aggressive, measured. I have filed a report with the county labor board. I have contacted an advocacy organization that is currently reviewing the accounts of 4 former employees of the Blue Spoon Diner, 2 of whom were not difficult to find once someone thought to look. He watched the color drain out of Derrick's face. 4 former employees, Cole continued quietly, a pattern of behavior over 11 things that each look like nothing. Things that each look like nothing. A dock in pay, a grab on the arm, a visit to an apartment, a call to a landlord. He paused. But patterns have a way of looking very different once you write them all in the same document. Derrick opened his mouth, closed it. I am not asking you for anything, Cole said. I am not threatening you. I am telling you, as plainly as I know how to say it, that you are standing in a hallway you should not be standing in. And if you are not out of this building in the next 60 seconds, every person I've already contacted will receive a phone call describing exactly what I'm looking at right now. Describing exactly what I'm looking at right now. Silence. The door behind Derrick, Lily's door, did not open. She was listening. Cole knew she was listening. He could feel the hell breath of her on the other side of the wood. Every word landing. Every word being received by a woman who had spent 14 months being told she had no options. Now, hearing someone dismantle that lie out loud, one sentence at a time. Derrick looked at Cole for a very long time. Looked at him the way men look at each other when they're deciding whether a bluff is a bluff. When they're calculating weight and depth, whether the thing in front of them is solid or hollow. Cole did not blink. Derrick Holt picked up his keys, straightened his jacket, did all of this with the methodical precision of a man trying very hard to look like he was choosing to leave, rather than being pushed. He walked past Cole without a word, through the lobby, out the door. Cole listened to the footsteps recede, waited until he heard the sound of a car engine starting and pulling away. Then he turned to face Lily's door. He's gone, he said. A silence. Then the sound of a deadbolt. Then the chain. Then the door opened. Lily Cross looked at him. She was in her work clothes, dressed for the shift she wasn't taking, out of habit or hope or the absence of any other routine. Her pink shirt visible beneath the jacket she hadn't buttoned, her hair down, her eyes red around the rims. But her jaw was set in a way that was different from anything Cole had seen across the counter of the diner. That one had been endurance. This one was something closer to decision. You heard all of that? Cole said. All of it, she confirmed. She stepped back from the doorway. He came in. Her apartment was small, clean in the way that careful keep small spaces clean. Not because they have much, but because order is the one thing that still belongs to them. A kitchen's table with 2 chairs, a window facing the street. On the counter, a coffee maker, a single mug, a folded dish towel, placed with the plan to control the small things of someone who had large things were out of reach of someone's because they were out of reach. Lily sat down at the table. Not collapsing, sitting, the way a person sits when they have decided to stay upright no matter what comes next. 4 former employees, she said. Is that real? Sandra found them, Cole said. She made calls yesterday afternoon. 2 women. Both left the diner. In the last 4 years, both had stories similar to yours. Both had decided there was no point in reporting them. He paused. There's always a point. They just needed someone to ask. Lily looked at a spot somewhere past Cole's shoulder. The look of someone rearranging what they thought they understood. He's going to lose the diner, she said. It wasn't a question. I don't know yet, Cole said honestly. These things take time. Investigations, documentation. But it begins today, if you're weighted. Are you willing? She looked at him. What does that mean? Willing. What do I have to do? Talk to Diane Colby. She's professional. She does this every day. She's not going to push you into anything. She's going to tell you your options and let you choose. He paused. And then I'd like you to give a statement to Gerald Hatch at the Labor Board, a written account. Your own words. Everything you told me, and everything you didn't. And my lease, she said. If Ray Fitch decides to, Diane has a hire specialist. Retaliation by a landlord on behalf of an employer is its own category of violation. He let that land. Lily, you are not as alone in this as he needed you to believe you were. Her eyes filled. She pressed them shut briefly, pressed her lips together, then opened her eyes again, and there was something different in them. Not resolved. Nothing was resolved, but a kind of terrible, necessary clarity. Okay, she said. Okay, I'll talk to her. Cole nodded. She can be here in 20 minutes. Lily blinked. You already called her? Sandra called her at 7:30. For a long moment, Lily just looked at him. Then she made a sound that was not quite a laugh. Too raw for that. Too unsteady. But had something in it that might have been distantly the beginning of relief. You people are terrifying, she said. So I've been told, Cole said. Diane Colby arrived at 8:52. Late 40s. Compact and direct. Reading glasses on a beaded chain, a canvas tote bag full of paperwork that she set a chilly with the practiced efficiency of someone who had sat at a lot of kitchen tables. She shook Lily's hand. She introduced herself without preamble or softening. She sat down and said, "Tell me about your employment at the Blue Spoon Diner. Start from the beginning. Don't edit anything because you think it's too small. Nothing is too small." Cole stayed in the doorway for the first 10 minutes. When he was satisfied that Lily was steady and that Diane was exactly what she needed, he stepped outside. He sat on the front step and called Gerald. "He came to her apartment this morning," Cole said. "I was there. I witnessed it." "I'll note it," Gerald said then. "Cole, when I pulled the file on Holt, we have had previous contact with that property. 18 months ago, an anonymous complaint. Filed and closed. The person who closed it was a former colleague of mine who retired last March." A pause. "I'm reopening it. All of it. Cole, let that settle." "Gerald, how long before she's protected legally? How long before he can't touch her job, her housing? Any of it." A long pause on the other end. The pause of a man being honest rather than comforting. The investigation gives her some cover immediately. Retaliation during an active inquiry is serious exposure for him. But formally protected, where she has real legal recourse if he moves against her. Another pause. 60 to 90 days if everything moves fast. 60 to 90 days. Cole looked at the door behind him. Thought about Lily at her kitchen table, giving her account to Diane Colby. Thought about 14 months. Thought about the bruises. Thought about a landlord who was already reconsidering her lease. 60 to 90 days was a long time. He thanked Gerald and hung up. He sat for a moment in the quiet of that morning, the October air cold and clear around him, and he thought carefully and practically about what 60 to 90 days meant for a woman living alone 3 blocks into Escalate, who had just demonstrated he was willing to escalate. Then his phone buzzed. Rafe. He read the text. And for the first time since he had ridden into Millhaven 3 days ago, he felt the situation shift underneath him in a direction he had not anticipated. Because what Jude had just told him, what the 17-year-old dishwasher had overheard through the thin pine partition wall of Derrick Holt's office, was not about a lawyer. It was not about the labor board. It was about a file. A file Derrick Holt had apparently been keeping for a very long time. On Lily, on her finances, her history, her lease, on a restraining order that had been filed in another county 4 years ago. Not against her, by her, against someone else. Someone she had left before she came to Millhaven. Someone whose name Tommy had heard Derrick say on the phone. Someone Derrick Holt apparently knew. Cole set his phone face down on the step. He breathed in, breathed out. He looked at the door behind him, thought about Lily, still writing, still steady, still doing the bravest thing she had probably done in 4 years. And he understood with a cold and absolute clarity that what he was dealing with was not a controlling employer who had gotten used to easy power. What he was dealing with was something that went back further than the Blue Spoon Diner. Something that had followed Lily here. He did not tell her right away. He went back inside. He made a pot of coffee. It was something he could do right now that was concrete and useful. He stood at the kitchen counter and turned it over and examined it from every angle. The way you examine something that doesn't fit the shape of what you thought you were looking at. Diane finished with Lily at 10:15.
She gathered her papers, snapped her tote bag closed,
Gave Lily a card with 3 numbers on it. Diane's direct line, the Advocacy Center's after-hours line, and a housing attorney named Paul Reeves, who Diane said was ferocious in the best possible way. Lily walked her to the door. When she turned back to the kitchen, Deacon Kid, she found Cole still standing at the counter, with an expression she had not seen on him before. Not the steady calmness, something underneath it, something held down by will. "What?" she said. Not a question, a recognition. He looked at her. "Sit down." She sat. He told her what Tommy had overheard. He said it plainly, without softening it, because he had learned that softening hard truths was a form of disrespect. It assumed the other person couldn't carry the weight. And Lily Cross had been carrying weight most people couldn't imagine for longer than she should have had to. He watched her face while he talked. She went very still first. Then a series of things moved across her face in quick succession. Shock, then recognition, then something that looked almost like the particular terrible relief of a thing you have suspected. Suddenly being confirmed. The relief of not being crazy, of the pattern being real. "Marcus," she said. The name came out barely above her breath. "Tommy heard a name," Cole said. "Marcus Hale," she said. "That's who it was, isn't it?" Cole waited. "Say the name Tommy heard," she said. Her voice was completely flat. The flatness of someone who had gone past the point where they could afford emotion in this moment. "First name Marcus," Cole said. He didn't catch the last name. She pressed both hands flat against the table, pressed them down hard, like she was steadying herself against something that was trying to pull her up and away. "Marcus Hale," she said slowly, placing the name carefully in the room between them. "I was with him for 3 years. In Clarksburg, 2 counties over. When I left, he didn't accept it. He came to my workplace. He left things at my apartment. He told me I would never get far enough away." Her jaw was tight, hands still flat on the table. "I filed the restraining order. And then I left Clarksburg. I came here because it was far enough and small enough, and I needed a while, and the Blue Spoon was hiring." She paused. "I never told anyone in this town. I never told Derrick." "Derrick knew anyway," Cole said. "Marcus told him." She said it like it had been sitting there all along. The answer obvious, now that she was looking directly at it. They must know each other. Marcus grew up in this county. He would have connections here. He would know people. She made a sound in the back of her throat. "He knew where I went. He's always known where I went. And he put Derrick in place. Or Derrick was already there, and Marcus reached out to him." She stopped. Her breathing had changed. "I didn't escape." Her voice dropped to almost nothing. "I walked straight into it." The silence that followed was different from any of the previous silences between them. It had a weight to it that was almost unbearable, the weight of a specific kind of horror. The kind that comes not from danger itself, but from the realization of how long the danger has been invisible. Cole crossed the kitchen and sat down across from her. He put his hands on the table, not reaching for hers, not pushing, just present. "Lily," he said, "look at me." She looked up. "You did not walk into a trap that you set for yourself," he said. "You ran. You went as far as you could with what you had. That is not failure. That is survival." He held her gaze. "And the trap that was here before you arrived, we are going to dismantle it. All of it. You understand me?" She held his gaze. Her eyes were bright and furious and frightened all at once. Then slowly, from somewhere deep and tired and long compressed, something shifted in her face. Not relief, not yet, but the very first edge of it. The specific, almost imperceptible straightening of a person who has just been handed back something they forgot belonged to them. "How?" she said. And her voice, for the first time in 14 months, did not sound like a woman waiting to be told the answer was no. "First step," Cole said. "I need you to call your sister in Knoxville." That surprised her. "Why?" "Because Marcus Hale knows where you are. And he has apparently been maintaining contact with Derrick Holt about you. Which means the restraining order may have been violated in ways that are documented and provable. Your sister is family. She needs to know what's happening. And you need someone in your corner who loved you before any of this started." He paused. "Am I wrong?" A long moment. Then she shook her head. "No," she said quietly. "You are not wrong." "Call her," he said. "I'll be outside." He stepped out onto the front step and called Jude. "I need you to find out everything you can about a man named Marcus Hale," he said without preamble. "Grew up in this county, moved to Clarksburg, has some connection to Derrick Holt. I need his current address, his employment, any record of contact with Holt in the last 14 months. And I need to know whether there's been any breach of a restraining order filed against him in Clarksburg 4 years ago." Jude was quiet for 2 seconds. "Cole, This just got a lot bigger than a diner manager. I know. You want me to call Vic? I want you to call everyone, Cole said. But quietly, no visibility. I don't want Marcus Hale to know anyone is looking. Until we know the shape of everything. Understood. A pause. How's she doing? Cole looked at the closed door of the building. Through it, faintly, he could hear Lily's voice. Low, uneven. The specific cadence of someone telling a hard truth to someone they love for the very first time. She's calling her sister, Cole said. Jude understood what that meant. Good, he said. Cole hung up and sat with the cold morning air for a while. He thought about patterns, about the specific calculated nature of what Marcus Hale had apparently built. Not just an obsession, but a structure, an architecture of control that had followed Lily across county lines, that had a man in place before she even arrived, that had been operating quietly for 14 months while Lily believed she had finally found a place safe enough to breathe. The brutality of it was not in the violence. The brutality of it was in the patience. He was still thinking about that when Lily opened the door behind him. He turned. Her eyes were red, but her face had something in it that had not been there before. The particular complicated expression of a person who has just stopped carrying a secret, alone. How'd she take it? Cole asked. She cried, Lily said, and then she stopped crying and asked me for Derrick Holt's full name and the address of the diner. A pause. She's a paralegal. She's been one for 9 years. I forgot that she would know exactly what to do with information like that. Cole almost smiled. Good sister. The best one, Lily said. And her voice broke slightly on it, in a way that had nothing to do with weakness and everything to do with the specific ache of realizing too late that you should have made a phone call sooner. She's driving up tonight. She'll be here by 9, Cole nodded. You'll stay somewhere other than here tonight. Sandra can arrange it. We know a woman in town, her name's Ruth. She has a guest room and Derrick Holt has never been within 6 blocks of her house. You'll be safe. Lily looked at him. You have an answer for everything. Not everything, he said honestly. Marcus Hale is the part I don't have fully figured out yet. His phone buzzed. Jude. Cole, read the text. Read it again. Then he went very still, because what Jude had found, what Vic had pulled from a lease agreement filed 11 months ago, was not what Cole had expected. Marcus Hale was not 2 counties away. Marcus Hale was not in Clarksburg. Marcus Hale had moved to Millhaven. He was here. Had been here. 14 Birchwood Drive. 11 months ago, 3 months after Lily started at the diner. Cole set his phone face down on the step, breathed in, breathed out. He looked at Lily. She was watching his face, reading what was happening on it with the accuracy of someone who had spent years learning to read the weather in other people's expressions. What is it? She said. He showed her the text. She read it, read it again. Then she sat down very slowly on the front step beside him. He's here, she said. He's been here. 11 months, Cole said. The silence that followed was the longest one yet. Then Lily Cross did something that surprised him. She straightened. She put her hands flat on her knees, and this time it wasn't to steady herself against collapse. It was to anchor herself to something solid while she made a decision. The kind of decision that doesn't ask permission, the kind that comes up from somewhere below thought, cut from the part of a person that has been compressed for so long that when it finally moves, It moves completely. Okay, she said. Her voice was low and absolutely clear. She turned to look at Cole directly, her eyes blue and deep, and no longer calculating exits. Then we end this. All of it. Today. She paused. Not 60 to 90 days today. Cole looked at her. Tell me what you need from me, she said. All of it. Everything. I will do every single thing it takes to make this stop. Cole held her gaze for one long moment. In it, he saw everything that had happened to her, and everything that was still happening, and everything that she was choosing right now. On this front step, in the cold October morning, to refuse. I need you to trust me for a few more hours, he said, and then I need you to walk back into that diner with me. Her eyes widened slightly. With me, he said, and with everyone I brought to this town. Who? Pistol! You will not be standing there alone. You have never been alone since the morning I walked in and sat down at that counter. He paused, but it needs to be you who walks through that door. Because what happens next needs to start with you. Lily Cross looked at him across the cold morning air, and she said, let's go. They walked to the diner, not drove. Walked. Cole had suggested it, and Lily had understood why without him having to explain. Because walking meant arriving at a pace that belonged to her. Meant choosing every step. Meant that when she pushed through that door, it would be on her own 2 feet, and nobody could take that away from her afterward. Sandra fell into step on her left, Jude on Cole's right, the rest of the crew behind them. 12 people moving through the cool October morning, with the quiet, purposeful of people who did something and have decided and are no longer debating it. Lily did not speak during the walk. Cole did not push her to. He understood that she was doing something internal. The kind of preparation that has no words, because words would only get in the way of it. She was walking and breathing and reminding herself of the things she had said on the front step on the stomp, past spot 4 minutes ago. Let's go. She had said it and she had meant it. And she was still meaning it with every step, even as her hands were cold and her heart was going too fast. And some very old kind of thing she had learned was screaming that this was exactly the kind of thing she had learned not to do. She pushed through the door of the Blue Spoon Diner at 11:47 in the morning. The bell above the door jingled. Every head in the room turned. The lunchtime crowd was light. 3 tables occupied. A man at the counter with a newspaper. Greta, moving between booths with a water pitcher she nearly dropped when she saw who had just walked in. Tommy appeared in the kitchen window, registered Lily's face, and went perfectly still. Lily walked to the center of the floor and stopped. Cole came in behind her. The crew filed in after him, quiet, unhurried. The diner filled in a way that changed the air pressure of the room. Not threatening. Deliberately, precisely not threatening. Just present. Just there. Derrick Holt's office door was partially open. Lily looked at it, then she looked at Greta. Can you get him, please? Greta stared at her for 1 second. Then she nodded. Crossed to the office and knocked her twice and said in a voice that was remarkably steady for a 19-year-old who was clearly terrified. Derrick, Lily's here. She'd like to speak with you. A pause from inside the office. A long one. The kind that means a man is deciding how to arrange his face. Then the door opened. Derrick Holt stepped out. Jacket on. Keys in his hand. He looked at Lily, then at Cole, then at the room full of people who had ridden 12 motorcycles into his town and were not leaving until this was finished. Something moved through his expression, not fear exactly, but the close cousin of it. The moment when a calculated man reads his calculations are off and needs to recalculate very quickly. "Lily," he said, "you're not on shift today." "I know," she said. Her voice came out clear, steady. The voice of a woman who had spent 14 months making herself small and had just decided on a front step on a cold October morning that she was done. "I'm not here for a shift," she said. She reached into the canvas bag Sandra had handed her before they left and pulled out a folder. "I'm here because it's time we talked. Right here, right now." Derrick looked at the folder, then at Lily, then at the room. He made one more calculation, the last one he would make in the Blue Spoon Diner. "I don't think this is the appropriate. I have documentation," Lily said, "of 11 pay deductions you took from my wages and recorded as register errors. I have a record of 4 incidents where you made physical contact with me without my consent. I have written accounts from 2 former employees of this diner who left within the last 4 years and who have described in their own words experience substantially identical to mine." Derrick had gone very still. "And I have," Lily continued. Her voice dropped slightly, slower now, each word placed deliberately. "A copy of a text message sent from your phone to a number registered to Marcus Hale, dated 9 months ago, in which you describe." She opened the folder, looked at a specific page. "The current situation is stable and manageable." The room had gone absolutely silent. Derrick Holt looked like a man who has just stepped onto ice he believed was solid, and felt it shift under his weight. "Where did you get that?" he said. "It was obtained legally," Lily said, "through a process I don't fully understand and don't need to. What I understand is what it means." She closed the folder. "You knew Marcus Hale before I started working here. You hired me knowing who I was running from. And for 14 months, you kept him informed about me. You kept me frightened and isolated and financially dependent so that I would stay in one place and never make enough noise and never bring attention to either of you." Derrick opened his mouth. "Don't," said Cole. "Just one word. Quiet." "Final." Derrick closed his mouth. From the counter, the man with the newspaper had turned around on his stool. He was in his 60s, gray mustache, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He had been sitting there for 40 minutes with a cup of coffee and a very particular kind of stillness, the kind that belongs to men who are paid to be patient. He reached into his breast pocket now and removed a badge, set it on the counter in front of him, with a sound that was small and metallic and unmistakable. "Detective Ray Okafor," he said. "Millhaven PD. Mr. Holt, I've been listening to this conversation. I've also been in contact this morning with the Clarksburg Department regarding a Marcus Hale. If you'd like to step outside with me, I have some questions." Derrick Holt looked at the detective, looked at Lily, looked at Cole, looked at the room. His face went through something that had no clean name. The final full collapse of a structure that had been built on the assumption that no one would ever look closely enough. That people in small towns stayed quiet. That a woman running from something would keep running, rather than turn around and face what was chasing her. He had been wrong about all of it. "I want my lawyer," Derrick said. "That's your right," Detective Okafor said pleasantly. "You can call them from outside. After you." He gestured toward the door with the calm of a man who has done this many times and finds it neither dramatic nor complicated. Just a door. Just a next step. Derrick Holt walked past Lily without looking at her. He walked past Cole without looking at him either. He walked out the door. For a moment, just a moment, the diner held its breath. Then Greta made a sound, short, sharp, halfway between a sob and a laugh. She pressed both hands over her mouth, and her eyes were enormous and wet. Tommy came through the kitchen door and just witnessed something, stood in the middle of the floor, looking at Lily with the expression of someone who has just witnessed something he will spend the rest of his life trying to describe accurately and never do quite manageable. Parted from the booth nearest the window, a woman in her 70s named May, who had been eating lunch at the Blue Spoon twice a week for 9 years, put both hands on the table and pushed herself slowly to her feet, with the deliberateness of age and intention, and she started clapping slowly, then steadily. The man 2 booths over stood up. Then the couple near the door. It wasn't a movie moment, it was smaller than that. Quieter, more real. 6, 7 people in a half-empty diner in a small American town, standing up because they were ashamed of how long they had been sitting down. Lily stood in the middle of it and didn't know what to do with her face. Her jaw was trembling. Her eyes were full. She was holding the folder against her chest with both arms, like it was the only solid thing in the room. Sandra appeared at her elbow and said quietly, "You okay?" "I don't know," Lily said. Her voice was barely working. "I think so. I think I will be." Sandra put an arm around her shoulders, firm, steady. The arm of someone who knows that what a person needs in a moment like this is not words, but weight. Solid human weight. Cole stood a few feet away. He was not clapping. He was watching Lily the way he had watched her since the first morning, with that same quality of attention. Careful and complete. But there was something different in it now. Something that had been held under compression had released. Just slightly. The specific exhale of a man who has been afraid he would be too late, and wasn't. Lily looked over at him. He nodded once. She nodded back. That was all. That was enough. Detective Okafor came back in 20 minutes later and spoke briefly with Cole, then with Lily. He told her that Marcus Hale had been picked up at his residence on Birchwood Drive 40 minutes ago, picked up by the Clarksburg department, who had been waiting for exactly this kind of probable connection to a restraining order violation. He told her that the Labor Board investigation was now a criminal referral, which was a different and considerably more serious thing. He said these things in the flat, factual tone of a man who understands that clinical language is sometimes the kindest language because it makes the unbelievable sound manageable. Lily listened. She asked 3 questions. She signed 2 things. Her hand was steady. When Okafor left, she sat down at the counter. Her counter, the place she had stewed for 14 months, and put her face in her hands. Not crying, just breathing. Just being still for a moment inside the eye of something that had been a storm for so long she'd forgotten what calm felt like. Jude, who had been sitting 3 stools down pretending to read the menu, slid a cup of coffee toward her without looking up. She lifted her head, looked at the cup, looked at Jude, "Thank you," she said. "Frozen biscuit," he offered. She laughed. It came out rough and surprised and real, the kind of laugh that lives very close to tears. She pressed her hand over her mouth. Jude looked deeply satisfied with himself and studied the menu some more. Cole sat down beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. The diner was slowly returning to something like normal around them. Greta refilling waters, Tommy back in the kitchen. The sound of ordinary things resuming. The particular resilience of a place that has been through something and decided to stay open anyway.
"What happens now?"
Lily asked finally. "Now your sister gets here tonight," Cole said. You stay at Ruth's. The investigation moves forward without you having to carry it alone. Carla handles the legal side. Diane handles the housing. Gerald handles the labor board. He paused. You specifically get to decide what you do next, for the first time in a long time. She thought about that. Then she looked at him. "You said something this morning," she said, "about your sister, about what she asked you to start doing when she was well enough to ask." "I remember." "I want to do that," Lily said. "After. When this is over, however it ends, I want to be part of whatever this is." Cole looked at her for a long moment. She meant it. He could see that she meant it with the full, fierce, exhausted certainty of someone who has just come through something that has fundamentally rearranged their understandings of any moment of what matters. "We'll talk about that," he said. When this is over, he finished his coffee, set the cup down, put on his jacket. He looked at her one last time, with those pale grey eyes that had seen enough of the world to know what mattered in it. "We'll be in town through the weekend, if you need anything." "And after the weekend?" she asked. "You have Sandra's number, Diane's number, Carla's number, Gerald's number." He paused. "And you have your sister. And you have Greta and Tommy. And you have May, who has apparently decided she is going to come in every single day this week specifically to sit in this diner and be visibly supportive." "Which is everything," Lily said. Cole smiled, a real one this time, not the shadow of one. Not the version that lived only behind his eyes, the full thing. It changed his face completely. "Yeah," he said. "It is." He walked to the door. "Cole," she said. He turned. She had been trying to find the right thing to say for days, had been turning it over, discarding words that were too small, phrases that were too large. She landed finally on the simplest version of the truth. "You looked," she said, when it was easier not to. "You looked, and then you came back." She held his gaze. "That's everything. That's the whole thing." Cole Rain stood in the doorway of the Blue Spoon Diner with the October light behind him, and he was quiet for a moment. With the weight of that, with 14 months of a woman's life, with his sister's 3 years of rebuilding, with every room he'd ever walked into because someone needed someone to walk in. Then he nodded once. The nod of a man who has received something important and intends to carry it carefully. And he walked out. Through the window, Lily watched the 12 motorcycles pull out of the parking lot one by one, steady and unhurried, rolling back onto Route 9 the way they had rolled in 5 days ago. Except that 5 days ago they had been strangers passing through, and now they were something that didn't have a clean word, but was real and solid and would last. She stood at the window until the sound of the engines faded entirely. Then she turned back to the diner, to Greta, already straightening menus with the purposeful energy of someone who has decided to be useful. To Tommy, singing something quietly in the kitchen, off-key and completely unself-conscious. To Ofty, to May, he settled into the window booth with a second cup of coffee and an expression of complete and comfortable permanence. Lily picked up the coffee pot. She was not the same woman who had been holding this coffee pot 5 days ago. She knew that. She could feel it in the way she stood, in the way she looked at the door, not calculating exits, just seeing a door, a regular door. One that people came through and went out of and held open for each other like decent people do. It would not be simple from here. Nothing real ever was. There would be hearings and statements and the long, unglamorous work of legal process. There would be nights when the fear came back because that was how it worked. Hot! It didn't disappear just because the threat had been removed. It took time and the slow accumulation of safe days to learn a different default. She knew that. She was ready for that. But she was ready for it as a person who had chosen her next step. Not as a person who was waiting for someone else to choose it for her. She refilled May's coffee. May looked up and said simply, "You did real good today, honey." Lily Cross smiled. A real one, with nothing behind it but the clear and open fact of itself. "Yeah," she said, "we did. And in Millhaven, on a Tuesday morning that had started like every other Tuesday and ended like nothing that had ever come before it, that was exactly and completely enough. Some people come into your life for a reason." Coleraines didn't know Lily Cross. He had no obligation to stop, no reason to turn around. He was just a man who had learned the hard way that looking away has a price, and that sometimes the most powerful thing one person can do for another is simply to ask a question nobody else thought to ask out loud. "Who did this to you?" 3 words. That's all it took to change everything in Millhaven. If this story moved you, if you've ever been the person who looked away or the person who needed someone to look, tell us in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe that stories like this one matter, subscribe to Heart Tales. Every story we tell is about ordinary people who chose to do the extraordinary thing. More stories are waiting for you on screen right now. We'll see you in the next one.